Welcome to another video. This video is part 2 to my last video on labels. After getting some feedback, I wanted to clarify a few things. So let's jump in. First, I wanted to make it known that I am not entirely against mental health labels, and I'm not saying that we should all go ditch the labels that we have. Labels are not inherently bad. They're simply ways that we organize, classify, and describe stuff. So what matters is that we cultivate a healthy relationship with those labels. Sometimes getting to a healthy place with a label might mean completely getting rid of that label, or other times it might mean changing what you believe about that label, or it might mean that that label doesn't need any adjusting at all. So how do we cultivate a healthy relationship with the labels around us? In my mind, getting to a healthy place with the labels we have is all about creating the space that's necessary to do what you value in life. For example, let's say deep down you want to be more social and you want to build more meaningful relationships with the people around you. Let's also say that you've been diagnosed with social anxiety and that being around new people stresses you out. In this case, if you allow that anxiety and especially that label to keep you from going out and being more social and working on building those relationships, then in my mind, you do not have a healthy relationship with that label. That label should not be holding you back. Just because you've been diagnosed with social anxiety, and I'm not talking about misdiagnoses here, I'm talking about an accurate diagnosis from a trained therapist. Just because you've been diagnosed with social anxiety, that does not mean that you should just give up on the goal of building more relationships with other people. The diagnosis simply means that there's likely going to be some discomfort with pursuing that goal. And sometimes it might be a ridiculous amount of discomfort. Now, this discomfort is something that you can work on embracing and accepting while you continue to pursue the things that you value in life. The key point here is that in order to maintain a healthy relationship with a label, it's really important to not let that label have the final say in the actions that you want to take with your life. Next, I want to talk about recovery. In my last video, I mentioned how important it is to believe that you can recover. Sometimes recovery is an ambiguous term, so I wanted to clarify what my definition of recovery is and what I mean when I'm talking about it in that previous video. The way I define recovery is all about actions, and more specifically, it's about doing the things that you value. Recovery is striving to do the things that you want to do with your life while being the person that you want to be. This means that you can be riddled with symptoms of anxiety, depression, and OCD, and at the same time, if you are not letting those symptoms govern your life and you are pursuing value-based actions, then you are currently in a state of recovery. So really, recovery is all about doing the things that you value in the present moment. And with this, it's important to realize that you can choose recovery and you can choose your values in any given moment. Now, I don't want to set an unrealistic expectation, but when you live this way and you're pursuing your values and you're not letting those symptoms govern your life, you might be surprised at how much your mental health improves over time. Now, I also want to talk about what I said about personal boundaries and limitations. In the last video, I mentioned that when I first got diagnosed with OCD and generalized anxiety disorder, I was told to slow down. And a quick clarifying note here, it may have sounded like in the previous video I was saying that I was misdiagnosed. I was not misdiagnosed. I exhibited every symptom in the book for long periods of time. So anyway, I was told to slow down, and for a time I did. But the point I'm making here is that that period of slowdown time did not have to be a permanent thing. And I definitely could have tested that boundary more. Now, when it comes to playing with boundaries, I'm not encouraging everyone to go burn themselves out. What I'm saying is that it's okay to periodically test the limitations and boundaries that have been set around you. And when you do actually find one of those boundaries or limitations, I am not encouraging you to push beyond that point. But I do think it's important to periodically test the boundaries that you've set around yourself and just see what you're capable of. There's nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to seeing what your limitations are. The bottom line here is that if there are things that you want to be doing with your life, but you're not doing them all simply due to a label, then that label is not serving you well. You do not have a good relationship with that label. and it might be time to either rethink what that label means to you or get rid of it entirely. Whatever you do, don't let a simple label keep you from pursuing the things that you want to do in life. Now I just have a few more thoughts to sum this video up. And first, I in no way want to stigmatize labels. Like I said in my previous video, I still do use the OCD label when I communicate with others about my own experience. There is no shame in using a label, but a simple label has nothing to do with your value as an individual. And we are complex beings, and a label might just be a tiny part of you. And so it isn't really fair to yourself to give that part too much weight. That part does not define the whole. It's just like this. It's just like this helmet here. This is not simply a piece of fabric. It's not a leather strap. It's not just a button. And calling it just one of these little things isn't fair to the helmet. Just like this, you are not anxiety, you are not OCD, you are not depression. You are a human, an individual who has potential, and you should not let one tiny aspect of your current circumstances define who you are into the future. And that is all that I have to say about that.